Let's get started with our installation. The closure will arrive in a pre-assembled state that will require removing the clamp and separating the base and dome. Flex the clamp lever arm to unlatch it from the clamp. Swing the lever arm open and, using the arm feet, pry the clamp open. Then, open the clamp and remove it from the base and dome. FOSC-400 bases contain an oval port along with the various numbers of round ports. The oval port is for use when a feed-through cable is installed so as to allow the cable to feed into the base without overbending. To begin the installation, mount the closure in the FOSC-400 workstand or similar device. Open the appropriate cable port based on the number of cables to be installed. We recommend preheating the ports slightly to soften the material. Then cutting off the end of the ports at the neck-down ridge with a sharp object such as a utility knife or a hacksaw. Remove any burrs or sharp edges from the port to prevent damage to the heat shrink components. Using typical cable preparation techniques, prep the cables to the dimensions described in the installation instructions. Where cable blocking is required, moisture blocking kits are available either separately or with the closure. When using loose buffer tube style cables, center the reverse point where possible to allow easy separation and routing of the fiber tubes. Note that depending upon the type of cable to be sliced, whether loose buffer tube or ribbon central core tube cable, the steps will vary slightly. The installation instructions provide plenty of detail regarding prep lengths, etc. for your specific cable type. Prior to the remaining installation steps, it is critical that the next step be to place the tubular port seals, followed by the closure base, onto the cables. Making sure the arrow on the seal is pointing toward the closure base, slide a cable port seal over the cable or cables before inserting the cables into the open base ports. It's important that the arrow on the seal be pointing toward the new base, as this helps to hold the seal in position during the heat shrink process. Next, place the cable into the selected open base port. For large fiber count loose buffer tube cables, it may be helpful to install only a portion of the buffer tubes at a time. Note that Tyco Electronics also supplies wraparound style cable seals as well. Available in accessory kits, these can be used when the tubular seal was not installed properly or when it's necessary to add a cable to an occupied port. Slide the cables into position and attach the strength members from each cable to the metal tower bracket using the square washers. FOSC-400 bases are available with or without feed-through grounds. If no feed-through ground is available, ground wires may be installed through a cable port using the appropriate accessory kit. Where grounding is required, attach the ground wires to the cables and to the feed-through grounds. For loose buffer tube cable, if no slack storage is required, route loose buffer tubes directly to the tray and secure them in place with tie wraps. For slack storage, note that FOSC-400 closures incorporate slack storage baskets, both regular and tall versions, as well as a storage sock for storing slack buffer tubes or fiber. Separate the designated buffer tubes to be routed and spliced from the expressed buffer tubes. Store the expressed buffer tubes in the bottom of the basket first, placing the designated buffer tubes on top, allowing easy accessibility in the future. To splice, route, mark, ring cut, and remove the excess buffer tube and clean the fibers per your approved practices. Add loose buffer tube wrap, route, and tie down designated tube to the tray for splicing. Route, splice, and store fibers on tray and install tray cover. The tray can be locked in the up position by using the red kickstand feature. Similarly, for A and B closures, a tray prop is provided. Note, one of the benefits of hinging trays is the ability to route buffer tubes directly to the tray in the event of fiber breakage or insufficient slack is available. Secure tray to basket using Velcro strap. Central core tube ribbon cable preparation is very similar to that of loose buffer tube cable. For storing ribbon slack, we recommend the use of the slack storage basket. If no slack storage is present, see the closure installation instructions for further detail. Secure the strength members and core tubes to the sides or bottom of the slack basket with tie wraps. Note that fibers can be routed to the trays using large transportation tube or spiral wrap. Sealing the cables into a port involves scuffing the cable and base to enhance adhesion, adding aluminum tape to protect the cables from the heat, and heat shrinking the cable seal in place. Note that when two or more cables enter a single port, such as the case with the main feed-through cable, it is critical that sealing material is placed between the cables. This is accomplished by using either a branch-off clip or a wraparound adhesive and metal pad we call SCOP. When a feed-through cable is used, we recommend sealing that cable into the oval port first. Clean and abrade the oval port and the cable sheath within 3 inches of the port. Pre-position the port seal on the cable and mark its position for easy locating on the aluminum tape. Aligning the mark on the aluminum tape with that on the cable, wrap the tape around the cable as instructed. For the oval port where two cables enter the port, install the branch-off clip and secure it in place with a tie wrap. Use a hot air gun and start shrinking the seal next to the base. Heat the seal near the base until the green paint turns black, indicating the seal is sufficiently heated. Continue heating the seal uniformly until it is shrunk completely around the base port first, then the cables. You should then see a little melted adhesive coming from the cable end of the seal, and the seal should be completely black. Repeat this process until all cables are sealed in the base of the FOSC-400 closure. Tyco Electronics supplies a hot air gun that is designed for getting the required amount of heat into the seals of the FOSC-400 and related heat shrink closures. Contact your salesperson for additional information. Verify that the O-ring is positioned correctly and slide the dome over the end of the closure. Where applicable, make sure the arrows on the base and dome align. Once the dome is seated on the base, attach the clamp using the lever feet on the latching mechanism to create leverage and close the clamp. If the clamp, dome, or O-ring is out of position, it will be extremely difficult or impossible to close the clamp, while there will be a snug fit if all components are positioned correctly. Once closed, a tie wrap or small lock can be installed in the hole in the clamp for extra security. For closures with valved domes, pressurize the closure to 5 psi and perform a flash test, checking for leaks. Once the check is complete, release the pressure. To add a cable after the initial installation is complete, a new cable seal kit is required. Additions to unoccupied ports can use either tubular or wraparound seal kits, while wraparound seal kits are required for adding new cables to occupied ports. When adding a cable to an occupied port, the existing seal must be removed. To accomplish this, heat the existing seal. Using care not to cut the port or cable, cut it with a utility knife. Then remove. Once the prepped new cable has been added, abrade the cable and port. Attach the SCOP adhesive pad to the new cable. Add the wraparound seal's Velcro strap to the port. Add the wraparound seal and shrink the seal. Notice the adhesive will flow at the end of the seal, indicating sufficient heat to the seal. New cable installation is now complete. The dome can now be placed back on the closure and the closure resealed. When installing cables smaller than 0.2 inches in diameter, the cable diameter must be built up to the minimum requirement and the cable itself protected from heat. To accomplish this, wrap the cable with a SCOP adhesive pad once the aluminum tape has been placed and prior to positioning and recovering the heat shrink. The SCOP provides several benefits. It builds up the cable diameter, it contains adhesive for sealing, and provides heat protection for the cables. As mentioned previously, when installing more than one cable in a single port, it is important to get sealant between the cables. To accomplish this, a SCOP adhesive pad or branch-off clip should be installed. SCOP pads should be used when placing multiple small drop or similar cables in a port, where branch-off clips should be used for placing 2 branch or feed-through cables in a port. Either of the above sealing methods for small or multiple cables should be used in conjunction with the standard practices for heat shrink sealing. This concludes the FOSC-400 fiber optic splice closure training video. During this video, we have shown you the steps to install a FOSC-400 fiber optic splice closure.